Elden Ring pretty much just came out, and here I am already fantasizing years in the future for a possible sequel, or maybe a big expansion or something. Let's hope. Even though you probably quote-unquote beat Elden Ring by now, you likely didn't kill every single boss, find all the secret locations, use all the weapons and spells, or see everything this ridiculously gargantuan one game has stuffed into it. So is it even humanly possible to expand on the scope of the gigantic Elden Ring after this? Well, luckily the team at From Software are not just meager humans like us, so they could make it happen. And just for the fun of it, I'm going to throw in a few ideas of my own of where this could go in the future. I'm sure you probably will, but let me know which of these are epically perfect ideas you would love to see, and which ones are dumpster fire trash ideas that you would absolutely hate. Let's get into it. This one is something that Soulsborne has somewhat dabbled in, but not really used much at all here in Elden Ring. That is, needing to actually aim your attacks at certain parts of enemies to break, rip, and cut things off of them. Depending on what is destroyed, it could yield special weapon drops, like cutting off the tails of some bosses in Dark Souls, or carefully removing extremities could disable certain attacks from the enemy. Aimed attack placement in a third-person combat engine is done really well in Monster Hunter and the Horizon games. Those make the enemy encounters feel a bit more intimate, since you have to be constantly aware of where you're attacking the enemy and with what. They both really reward skilled, precise placement of your attacks, which yield better material drops and easier dispatchment of enemies by debilitating or disabling some of their attacks depending on what you destroy on them. If Elden Ring 1 was training us for the combat basics, I would love to see Elden Ring 2 really go all in on letting you break and cut off enemy parts for increased rewards. A big element of the Soulsborne games and Elden Ring have been the passive multiplayer component that makes you feel always connected with the community. There are the messages that players can leave for everyone, which will likely point you towards an incorrect hidden wall or into a death trap, but some actually help you safely navigate new areas. Even when playing solo, this makes the world feel more alive, and like you're all working together to conquer it. Something that really took that passive camaraderie up to the next level was Death Stranding. You or other players can affect the entire game world by placing objects or constructing things that can then appear in other people's games. Years ago, I created an entire ski resort for people to maybe stumble across, so they could maybe break from the package delivery with a little SSX meets UPS shredding. Imagine if Elden Ring 2 had this kind of dynamic online game world. Maybe you're trying to traverse over to a brand new area, but you come up to a giant canyon you just can't cross. That happened to me quite a lot. Instead of spending 10 minutes going entirely all the way around to hopefully find a way up, perhaps you stumble upon a nice little bridge another real player constructed, which lets you get right over that gap in seconds. In Death Stranding, you reward people with thumbs up for their structures, but in Elden Ring, you could toss the person some extra runes if you found their addition to your world to be useful. This would all have to function off of some kind of new rare crafting material, so these objects couldn't just be puked all over the map too much though. There are many catacombs and hidden cave systems all over Elden Ring, but why not also have an infinite procedural mega dungeon that can massively extend the replayability? Very similar to Bloodborne's Chalice dungeons, but taken up to a whole nother level. God of War 2018 also had something similar with its Niflheim region, which created a randomized dungeon labyrinth with traps and combat encounters. A large infinite dungeon like this in Elden Ring would give a good opportunity to get gear drops you maybe hadn't found yet, or get weapons and armors from NPC questlines you missed for those who don't want to enter New Game Plus to go get them. Instead of people farming runes over and over at one location, which always seems to become a popular thing, just make the payouts for spelunking further and further into the infinite dungeon get impressively larger the longer you survive. In my opinion, a massive procedural layered dungeon system would make for the perfect endgame. It would make for an easy way for late game players to co-op together at one centralized place, where you never quite know what you're going to encounter together. For the PvP invader types, this would also be the place to post up and try to ruin entire teams' days by completely ending their dungeon runs. Elden Ring added these transporter trap chests that will kick you over into a far-off area of the map to completely reroute your jolly exploration and force you out of your comfort zone. This was a great addition, and I would love to see this really expanded upon. Take the game Outward, for example. Instead of a traditional game over or death screen where you have to reload a save, when you die in Outward, you wake up in a completely different new area. This makes for an interesting death penalty that actually encourages you to go explore elsewhere, instead of repeatedly redoing a tricky encounter over and over until you have it all memorized. Although I don't think this should be the way death always works in a hypothetical Elden Ring 2, it could be a unique disease or debuff you could contract from specific enemies that would persist until you manage to purge it at certain locations. That would maybe help shake up the regular trial and error repeat encounters, and could maybe even be used to your advantage, just like the transporter chests. When I say random encounters, I don't mean the old school RPG kind obviously, but Elden Ring 2 could use more dynamic situations that pop up unexpectedly. It does have a few cool things that happen depending on the time of day, but more things could be happening to help shake up repeat visits through the same areas. Take Red Dead Redemption or Grand Theft Auto for example, which have dynamic events that will occur all over the game world to make it feel a bit more alive. There are not a ton of these, and the immersion kinda breaks when you see the same event multiple times, but the idea is sound. I would like to see more surprise ambushes, run-ins with NPCs outside of their scripted main locations, or more invasions at complete random. That way, the world always still feels alive and threatening, even when traversing through a field you've gone through for the 100th time. Elden Ring 2 could make the world itself your enemy, with use of impactful dynamic weather effects. Take Breath of the Wild for example, where a strong storm is not just a simple graphic effect that you forget about. Rain will make it almost impossible to climb, making you rethink your navigation, and lightning will brutally strike anything in the area made of metal, friend or foe. In Valheim, if your character gets soaking wet and or cold, your stamina and health regen will be greatly impaired. This makes you rethink going out to take on a boss if it's raining, or make it drastically more difficult to explore during a big storm. Elden Ring does have preset areas that have debilitating effects, but if the weather could affect the entire game world in hazardous and interesting ways, that would add a whole nother layer to the exploration. So what do you think? Would you like to see any of these make an appearance in Elden Ring 2? Or Elden Rings? Or Elden Ringing? Or Elden Ring Revengeance? Feel free to use any of those from Soft. This early on, we do have a chance to somewhat influence a project like that if we're loud enough about it, so if you have some better ideas, shoot them down in the comments and I'll highlight the best ones. You've been watching Boomstick Gaming today. I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.